Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, Data Analysis with Dr. Veronica. In this video, we will go through the aggregate function. We will understand the different arguments and what they mean. We will also carry out basic aggregate operations with ref1 argument. We will look at basic aggregate operations with ref2 arguments, and we would also do a lot more other examples. If this is your first time of coming to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and like the content as well as share with your colleagues and your friends because you do not want them to miss out on amazing contents that are uploaded on this YouTube channel. Let us get started. Imagine that you have this data in front of you. This is pretty small, but in some situations, you could have data that is about 2,000, 5,000 rows, that is about 30 columns, and you in some cells, you have some errors, just like we have in cell B7 and cell C7. Sorry, cell B5, not B7. B5 and C7. And you're expected to carry out basic arithmetic functions, operations like max, mean, sum, median. And we know that we're going to do a quick example right now. To calculate the max for column B will not give us a value just because of the presence of this error cell. But if we stretch this formula up to column D, we can see that we are getting a result only for column D. And this is because column D does not have an error cell in between. How do we fix this? This is where the aggregate function becomes very useful because it allows you to carry out arithmetic functions while ignoring errors, ignoring nested subtotals, ignoring, you can even choose to ignore nothing. So the aggregate function is very useful in this regard. And the aggregate function actually has two syntaxes. You have the reference syntax and the array syntax. We're going to see that in a few seconds. And we are also going to look at the argument. So basically, I'm just going to put the equal to sign, which is the normal sign that you have to impute when you want to enter a formula. You put the equal to sign and you just type aggregate. And you can see the function already coming out. Now, for the aggregate function, I just wanted us to see the different syntaxes here. The first one is showing, of course, the function num arguments, the options arguments, the array argument, and then you can see a k by the side of the array. And for the next one, you have the function num arguments, the options argument, and the ref1, and we also have ref2 in the little dots that is by the side. So for the first syntax, it's basically showing you that the K is optional. And this is when you carry out the aggregate functions for sub-functions, if I would put it that way, that does not require an additional argument, a ref2 argument, for example. But the ref1 argument, and this is why you have the three dots. So the second syntax tells you basically that you can have only ref1 and you're fine. So it depends on which selection you make. But what does the function num argument? What is it exactly? First of all, the argument is compulsory and it extends from number 1 to 19. So this is basically a numerical representation of the different functions that you can use the aggregate function to get. It is a numerical representation of the different arithmetic operations that you can use the aggregate function to calculate. And we can see that it stretches from number 1 to 19. You have the average count down up to you have the quartile.exe. Okay. And of course, the next argument, which is the options argument, is also a mandatory argument and it stretches from number 1 to 7. It's a numerical value representing what you want to ignore in your computation. So we are going to see how this works in a few minutes. And let us go back to the example that we had. So if I want to calculate the max, if I want to know the maximum value for column B, while ignoring this cell that has the error. Of course, I can do this with the aggregate function. All I need to do is type aggregate, open the bracket. In this case, I am looking for the maximum value, so I'm just going to choose a numerical value, number 4, and I put the comma separator, and I go to the next argument, which says option. What do I want to ignore? I want to ignore error values. Okay, so the option 0 says ignore nested subtotal and aggregate functions. This means that if you have aggregate functions in the column, if any of the cell was an already calculated aggregate function, you can choose to ignore that so that you don't kind of do double counting. Yeah. And option number 1 says ignore hidden rows, nested subtotal, and aggregate functions. In this case, we just want to ignore error values only, right? So I'm going to choose 6, which is the numerical value representing what I want, which is ignoring error values. And I put the comma separator. And in this case, I'm going to choose the entire column. And the next argument, I am going to close the bracket because the max function does not require an additional argument. And I click enter and I hit the enter button instead. And this is the result that I have. This is amazing. And when I drag this to column C, I also have the maximum value, ignoring the error. And of course, we can replicate this example to get the minimum value, okay, using the aggregate function. If I go ahead to just put to just find the minimum value while I still have the error cell, I am going to have this error response. But of course, I can use the aggregate function. And this time around, mean is represented by numerical value 5. I also want to ignore error values. I put 6, I put the comma separator, and I choose the entire range of cells. And I drag towards my right, and these are the responses that I have. This is super amazing, especially when you have a huge set of data and you do not have the time to look out for errors in between the cells. You can use the aggregate function to save your time. So the next one is the sum, and the numerical value is 9. And of course, I choose to ignore the error values only. I can also choose number 4, which is ignore nothing. And let's see what that comes up, what it comes up to be. It gives me, of course, it's going to give me an error value because I'm saying ignore nothing, which Excel assumes that if you say I should ignore nothing, this means everything is okay. But in this case, everything is not okay because you have a cell that has an error value, right? So I'm just going to choose a 9. I put the comma separator and I choose ignore error values, and I choose my array, my range of cells, and I drag to this side. And of course, we can do this. The next example is the median aggregate. And the median is number 12, numerical value number 12. And I also choose to ignore that. And I am going to select my range of cells. And this is what I've got. This is easy peasy, and as well as it is amazing. We are going to look at having ref2 arguments with examples. In all the examples we've done so far, we've only looked at arithmetic operations that does not require us to have extra arguments. So in these examples, we are going to do examples that will show us how to use the ref2 argument in the aggregate function. And we are going to use these functions called large and small, right? Right now, we're looking at examples where we have to use the ref2 part of the argument in the aggregate function. Using functions like large or small, first of all, we know that the large function, for example, you're basically telling Excel to return the largest value in a certain position among the entire data set. So for example, you're telling Excel, among the array of cells, can you please return for me the second largest number, or the fourth, or the 10th, or the fifth, as the case may be, right? This is how the large function works. And let us just see how this is going to work when you have a cell that is an error, that gives you an error message among your array that you have selected. And I want Excel to give me the third largest number. And Excel is returning for me an error because I have a cell, I have an error cell, okay, among my array. This is why Excel is returning an error for me. But when I drag, of course, towards my right, you can see that Excel has turned out for me a number for column D, and this is the third largest number in this array of cells. Okay, and I can do this also for the small. With the small, it works in the same way. You select the array and then you select the position. Okay, do you want the first smallest number or the seventh, or do you want the third smallest number? In this case, let's say we want the second smallest number, and I'm having the same response. Basically, this is happening because we have error cells in between. But we can fix this using the aggregate function, right? So I am going to change this aggregate. And in this case, because I want to use large, I'm going to select the numerical function of 14. And then I am going to tell Excel to ignore error values for me, which is represented by 6. And the array is going to be this. And just because we have selected the large function, you need to tell Excel, okay, which position of the biggest number that it should return for you. So the large function has an extra argument that is that you have to show compulsorily. Now, let us assume that we just stop here and let's see what comes up. We have this value error. We have this error message showing us a value. This is an indication that the argument have not been completely entered. An argument is missing. This is why this error is showing up. What we need to do is that we need to complete the argument. And I'm just going to start from the beginning so that we can follow through. Aggregate. And the function that I am choosing is 14. So you can just double click or you can just write the number 14 manually. And I'm going to tell Excel to ignore error values. And I select my array. And because the large function works differently from the mean, max, the sum, and the median, I'm telling Excel, give me the one in the third position or the fourth largest number. And let's see. And Excel has just returned for me a value. Okay, of course, when I drag this way, I get the values that I want to get. So this is how it works using the ref2 argument. And in using the aggregate function, when you select an arithmetic operation that requires an extra argument, when you forget to put the extra argument, you get a value error. But when you put the extra argument, which is the ref2, and then it's okay, right? So let's do this for the small as well. Aggregate. And the small arithmetic function is represented by the number 15. And I'm going to say ignore this. And I'll go to choose my array, which is here, and I'm telling Excel, give me the second smallest number. This is what I want to see. And I am going to drag this to this way, and this is what I have. This is amazing, easy peasy to learn and to also understand. So I do not forget this particular practice file. The link to the practice file is in the description box. So please do well to download the practice file so that you can learn as you watch the video and you can better understand, of course, when you practice. And of course, please share this video with your friends and your colleagues. Drop us a comment in the comment section. Share this amazing content with them so that they will see and also learn. In this video, we were able to go through the argument in the aggregate function. We were able to carry out basic operations using the ref1 argument and the ref2 argument. We're also able to see other examples with other basic arithmetic operations embedded in the aggregate function. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you're yet to do so. Also, give us a thumbs up and share this amazing content with your friends and your colleagues, and drop us a comment in the comment section. Of course, you can reach out to us personally using the channels, the social media channels that are in the description box, and you can drop me an email. Thank you so much for stopping by, and see you in the next video.